Review copy provided by PlayStation.
Bradley Ellis, you like the Dark Souls games.
This is true.
And you've played a lot of Souls-likes, and you've also played Nioh.
Mm-hmm.
I reviewed Nioh, and I really liked it, but an interesting thing happened with Nioh where I played it, and it was very long, and I finished it, and I wrote the review, and I was very positive about it. And then I feel like I just kind of drifted away from Nioh.
Sure,
Like,
okay.
it wasn't like that I decided I didn't like it or anything. It wasn't, I don't think it had lodged itself in my heart as deeply as some other things did, even though I really
enjoyed
liked
it. Yeah, I understand that.
And so when it came to Nioh 2, I played one of the... They had
like the
so many
alpha or
betas.
something,
Yeah, I
yeah.
played one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked that as well. But I didn't have this kind of burning anticipation
We're like, yes!
for Nioh 2.
Yes, Nioh 2. Yeah.
Exactly.
You're just like, oh, sweet.
Yes. Yeah, I was like, oh, cool. I'll
Yeah.
check that out.
Yeah.
That was kind of where my head was at with Nioh 2. And I have been playing Nioh 2 in a way that I was not expecting. It's like... I'm like, oh, I'll play some Nioh 2, and then I kind of get sucked into a black hole, and I just lose track of time, to the point where, like, I have no idea how far I am in the game, or how long I've been playing. I'm level 51, so I've put some time in, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Not not at the very beginning. Yeah, I've been killing a lot of dudes. And I had this thought to myself. I was like, why am I enjoying this so much? Like, I think I definitely like it even more than Nioh 1. Why is that? And I had a hard time initially coming up with an answer because Nioh 2 is not all that dramatically different from Nioh 1. I think if you have played Nioh 1, you'll feel right at home.
Yeah.
Yes. This is almost like an old school like PC expansion in a way where like yes there are big new things but the base is so familiar and similar, and I think it was because why I was enjoying it so much is I think Nioh is exactly the kind of game that benefits from an iterative sequel like this. And what I mean by that is, yes, obviously Nioh draws a lot from the Souls games, but the more you dig into Nioh, the more you kind of realize how different the objectives of something like the Souls series and Nioh actually is. And so you actually spend a lot of time learning Nioh, or I spend a lot of time learning Nioh. Like getting down the key pulse and the different stances, figuring out all the weapons, things like ninjutsu and Onmyo magic and all that stuff. Like there's a lot to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
And so I think going into Nioh 2, there's even more to wrap your head around, and so you kind of get the pleasure of uncovering new things, but you also have a strong base to draw from where you're like, I know how the core of this game works. And so when you die or when you fail, you don't feel quite as stuck or punished when you're learning like the basic concepts for the first time all over again. And so I think if you already played Nioh 1, and I didn't play the DLC, but especially if you played the DLC, you are coming into Nioh 2 with an advantage. And what is interesting about Nioh 2 is I think the small things add such a huge difference. So Brad, I know you like a lot of things in video games in general, but where would you like rank parrying or counters on there? Okay.
Hi.
So one of the big new things in Nioh 2 is this burst mechanic. And that's actually kind of the thing I want to talk about first. Yeah. Because burst really changed the dynamic of fights in an interesting way. And it was just like, why am I enjoying Nioh 2 so much? The burst mechanic wasn't something that I thought too much about until I really stopped and thought, okay, what is this adding to the game? And the more I thought about it, I was like, oh no, I think this is single-handedly making fights much more exciting.
Really?
Yeah, because one of my complaints with Nioh 1 was enemy variety was limited to the point that by the time you got to the end of the game, you kind of felt like you were just on autopilot. It's like, okay, I see this thing, I know how to kill this thing. And what's interesting about bursts is they add this element of danger to regular enemies, where when an enemy, they like flash red for a second, and when they do an attack like this, it's really important that you burst. Otherwise, that attack, I wouldn't, maybe not a super attack, maybe that language is too aggressive, but it's a really powerful attack that will just chew through you if you don't know how to do it.
But you can tell there's like a visual cue.
There's a visual cue and a sound.
Okay.
It'll be like, boom, and then a red flash, and so it's very obvious.
Oh, okay.
And that alone kind of adds this oh shit moment to fights.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about the burst, especially when you're learning it, like there's different types of bursts, but the brute burst, kind of the most basic one, the one that I've been using. If you don't do it right away or you don't time it correctly, you'll end up, there's like 3 different ways it can go. You either do it perfectly and you interrupt their attack, and you do a lot of key damage to them, or you trade. And that's really interesting, where it's like, okay, yes, I hit them, but they also did a lot of damage to me, or you just mess it up completely, or don't do it at all and get hurt. And so you kind of have these exciting moments, especially during boss fights, where it happens fairly regularly, but it doesn't happen often enough where you'll like kind of get into a rhythm. You know, like in Souls, where it's like, okay, I see this attack, I do this. And if you're the type of player that wants to play keep away, it's like, well, the game is punishing me a little bit. I have to get in their face because I want to do the counter. Because a huge thing that you need to do to bosses is you need to drain their ki. And a huge way that you do that is by doing this counter.
Quick question. This sounds very much like the Makiri counter almost, like how it works and function, but it has the extra element of you being able to hit each other at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the Makiri counter is actually a very good comparison.
Okay.
And it gives enemies, I think, a little bit more of an identity. I think enemies actually already have a very strong identity, but because each of their burst counterable moves are so different, like you fight... One of the enemies that you fight is this Medusa snake lady who has giant boobs and no arms and makes the weirdest sound when she's like walking around. And she has actually 2 different burstable moves. One of them is a giant like tail flip, but then another one is you turn to stone. And obviously you don't want to do that. Being immobile, very bad.
Yeah,
a lot of things can go wrong, especially if that's not the only enemy that you're fighting, right? But what's a really good feeling is you actually have some invincibility to that move. Even if you don't hit her, but you time the burst right, she'll do the beam, and you just won't be turned to stone, which is a feel-good moment.
My biggest like concern about elements like this, like mechanics like this, is making it so worth it you want to do it, and finding a nice balance of maybe not necessarily just defeating a powerful, like, it'd be a problem for me if you did it on a boss like once and he like died or something like that.
Right.
But it sounds like to me you're gonna have to do this multiple times on certain enemies.
Right. The way that I've been doing it so far, especially against bosses, is it is certainly not like a you did a counter, the boss is dead kind of a thing. But I was watching this YouTuber, I think their name was Poir Gaming. Sorry if I get that shout out wrong. They actually mentioned something about the burst counter that I thought was interesting, where I think they were talking about it from a post-game perspective, where you were so used to the game that they were kind of like, if you really want to, you can just wait for the boss to do this burstable attacks.
Right.
And I wonder if you reach a point in the game, and I'm not there yet, where it becomes kind of so second nature or so powerful, or you find a way to abuse it that you can abuse it.
Right.
But at least in the early goings, Brad, it has only added to the excitement of fights.
Excellent.
Because I think in a Souls game or a game like this, or really any good action game, when you run up against new challenges, you kind of want like different levels, right? You want to have the I'm learning level. So even when you're failing, you're like, I have this new piece of information. And then you have the like, I'm getting a little bit better, where you don't do it right every time, but you do it right some of the times. And then you have the mastery, like, I'm going to do this every time sort of level. And that's a really satisfying progression as a player. And I think the burst counter and how it manifests between all of the different bosses, and there are a lot of bosses, and all the different enemies, adds another one of those, beyond the weapon stances, beyond the weapons themselves. And so I think it is interesting from that perspective.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think Nioh, before I played the original one, I feel like there was enough going on in the combat to kind of keep it interesting on your toes with the whole key thing, and like especially when you fight the yokai with like their realm and you have to do the key time and get rid of that, and the stances.
Right.
Then just adding another element. Does it feel like you're over encumbered with how much is going on? Do you feel like holy shit, like so much is going on I can't keep track, or does it come at like a nice kind of pace where you can kind of manage?
Right. Yeah, and I think when I was originally playing Nioh 1, I think I was coming at it from the perspective of a Souls player. And every comparison that I made, I would make to the Souls games. And I think the more that I play Nioh and now playing Nioh 2, I don't think that is very apt.
Sure.
I think Nioh 2 in a lot of ways is almost similar to like endgame or post-game action RPGs, where if you're the type of player that really loves putting together builds or mixing and matching gear or optimization or all these different builds, like every piece of gear has so much going on, and the ways in which you can upgrade it and soul match, and there's just so much for you to tinker with in terms of raw numbers, and it's really fun when you work your ass off to try to put together a build, or you have a plan where it's like, okay, I'm going to make the stats work for me in this way, much like you do in an action RPG, right, where you're pouring over every single piece of gear. You can do that in Nioh, I think, to a much more aggressive degree than you can in Souls.
Sure, yeah.
And so it is overwhelming, for sure. And I don't know if you're not somebody used to action RPGs or used to Nioh, if you're going to be able to come into Nioh 2 and be like, I love this. But I think if you have patience, like if you're the type of player that's like, I don't really want to look at the stats, like I'll just get good and go through it.
Yeah.
I feel like you're going to get punished for that, especially in the beginning where you don't really have the stats to work with, where you don't have like the key to really block super well.
Yeah, because gear is a huge part of this series, from what I remember.
It's a huge part of it, and you get so much of it.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're the type of person that gets a little bit tickled by like acquiring loot and scanning through it, I think.
And you're like, oh, new rarity, better level, kind of thing like that.
Right.
Like almost like kind of like a Diablo kind of game.
Exactly. But what's different about something like a Diablo or even a Path of Exile is when you start those games, like they're not super hard out the gate. Like there's a pretty big ramp. And that's what's interesting about Nioh, and I think that's where its identity is really at, is it is super hard at the gate, maybe even the most hard out the gate. And I can definitely see some people that pushing some people away, but it's also something I immensely respect about the game, and why I think I like Nioh 2 even more is it really is just adding on more layers and making it more complex. And as somebody who's played a lot of action games, a lot of Souls-likes, and a good number of ARPGs, I sort of admire its willingness to be complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what my next question was going to be. Was there anything from Nioh 1 that they took a look at and were like, we don't really want this in Nioh 2? Like, Nioh 1 had kind of like, your familiar animals you could summon. Right. Is all that still in here, pretty much everything from 1?
Yeah, they've changed it now. And so this actually should have been at the start of the video, because this is going to draw a lot of people in. So instead of just everybody playing the same dude as you are in Nioh 1, there's a character creator in Nioh 2, and I'm actually, you say, we have a character creator in our game. That's not really that impressive.
Yeah, you're like, okay.
But they went above and beyond. Not only how many options you have in Nioh 2, but I think how good it looks. Because everybody's always had that moment in character creators where you make a character and you're like, I'm so proud of this. It's so awesome. I love this. I can't wait to just look at this character. And it looks really good in the character creator screen. And then you get in-game and you're like, oh, that looks like an off-brand version of what I made.
Yeah.
That's not really the case in Nioh 2, at least in my experience with my character. The way that they represent you in cutscenes is really good. And that goes down to an animation level. Like, it's nice seeing my character in these really, like, quirky and bizarre cutscenes.
Sure.
Really animating, really feeling like a part of this world. And then the personalization that you can have with that as well. So you have, like, a room essentially, and you can like change the theme and then change like different yokai that are in there.
Interesting.
But kind of going back to the yokai companions that you like, that sort of system is more or less still in place. You now turn into a demon.
Yes, I remember this. Yeah,
which is cool. Yeah, but the big new thing with that is the yokai abilities, and this is actually pretty huge. So when you kill demons, they will drop something called a soul core. And when you have that soul core, you need to take it back to a shrine or a bonfire, and otherwise you'll drop it just like you do your experience and everything else. So it's another thing that gets left with your corpse, essentially. Once you bring it back to a shrine, you can purify it, and then you can imbue it to your spirit, which means you can equip it. And you can equip 2 of these things.
Okay.
And they're really interesting. For like a brief period, you turn into whatever demon that you got the soul core from. So there are these like one that I really like. There are these giant monkey-like Oni called Enki.
Cool.
And if you equip the ability of the Enki, you leap into the air and throw like a giant harpoon.
Dude, wow.
So, yeah. It's really neat. I think, again, like Nioh as this type of game, right, you have a bunch of different weapons that you want to experiment with, but I think for a lot of players, myself included, once you find a weapon that you like, you're going to stick with that weapon.
Sure.
A, because the game is hard and it's what you're comfortable with, and B, the stats reward you for doing so, right? So things, certain stats.
Can you
scale
still
with
like respec? You could a little,
yes,
okay.
Yeah, you can buy books of resurrection.
Okay, cool.
And then you could also get them from submissions and. That
so
sort of thing.
I remember Nioh being like super heavy on like builds, like customize your build, and like I'd see builds online. It sounds like with Nioh 2, they're just getting even more crazy with it.
Right, and I think the thing that I'm struggling with Nioh 2 is I've settled on the Odachi as my main weapon. I use an axe in Nioh 1, and I'm like, I'm going to try out some Onmyo magic, or I'm going to try out some ninjutsu, or I'm going to try this, and everything I'm trying also seems really good, and that's kind of the best feeling, right? Like, you want to kind of have that...
You want to experiment.
You want to have that voice in the back of your head where it's like, but maybe if you just did this...
Oh, maybe this would be cool.
Right,
yeah.
or this would let me overcome that challenge.
Yeah, it definitely has a feeling of like almost sometimes the grass is always greener.
Right.
And instead we're like, oh, well, what about if I had magic, this would be great, but if I did ninjutsu or this weapon, that's really cool.
And I think something that they do that really kind of encourages you to not have complete tunnel vision is you get items that will, and this happened in Nioh 1 as well, but you'll get items that will allow you to dive into other skill trees. So it's like, well, I'm just using this weapon, but I got this item that gives me a ninja skill point. So I'm going to explore that tree a little bit. Or I've got this Onmyo magic skill point. So I feel like they let you play around a little bit, and then obviously the books of resurrection, the things that let you try out different builds is really neat. I do want to go back to the yokai abilities really quick. Not only are they flashy and can be really good at creating opportunities for you and doing a lot of damage, but they're kind of like armor or weapons or accessories in the fact that they also have their own stats. So they like So you may run into this situation where it's like, I don't really like the actual active ability that the thing has, but the stats that it comes with are very, very good. And again, that is kind of neat where if you're the type of person where it's like, well, I'm only using this one weapon, at least you're probably constantly changing out soul cores and trying new abilities and making that part of your build. And so I think what I'm trying to say is, regardless of the type of player that you are, I think there are refinements within Nioh 2 that are keeping things fresher than maybe they were in the base game, at least for me, in Nioh 1.
I have a question. How are the environments in this game? Like the level design, is it still pretty much like the feudal Japan kind of vibe for everything?
Right. So, yes, it is still that, absolutely. I don't actually have that much to say about it, but the story of Nioh 1 definitely gets batshit crazy.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially at the end. What I appreciate about Nioh 2 is it kind of starts batshit crazy, and it has a really weird levity to it, where it's constantly joking in a really endearing way. It seems like if you look at gameplay of it, or you see like these bloodied battlefields, you're dealing with these fearsome samurai and ninjas and demons and all this shit, you expect a certain tone, and Nioh 2, especially its cutscenes, flies in the face of that. Like, it is humorous, or at least it's trying to be.
It kind of reminds me like, just how you're describing it, kind of like Yakuza almost, the Yakuza series.
Right.
Like
right,
really serious subject matter, but
Yeah, very good comparison. But you asked about the environments, and I'd have to go back to Nioh 1 to really solidify this opinion, but I feel like the level design is better. I'm having more fun going through levels because I feel like especially in the main mission levels, there's more effort put into how you navigate through them, where you'll kind of, in a main mission level, you'll have like a narrow path, and then it'll open up into a big thing, and then it'll narrow, and then it'll open up. And then when you get to those open areas, I feel like you have constant moments where you're like, okay, well, how do I get there? And then you have to kind of walk all around and then find a way to get there. And I feel like they've just like nestled items in more satisfying locations. So I feel like the level design is better. I feel a little bit flimsy on that praise because
it's been a while.
It's been a while with Nioh 1. And Nioh 1 certainly had those elements as well. But yeah, I would say by and large it's a little bit interesting. I think something that is going to frustrate people, maybe especially new people, if you are not somebody that is like living for the grind and getting powerful and like making that perfect build, which I think can be a powerful grind, when you're doing submissions and stuff, they are which I'm doing right now, at least I'm doing everything. They do take place in the same locations as other missions.
Yeah.
And so you'll go through an area
zones.
a few times. And so I think if you are somebody that constantly wants surprises, you reach a point if you're a completionist where you're not going to have that.
Yeah, Nioh rides like a strange and interesting line of like going through like environments kind of like a Souls like we talked about, but also having this really grindy element to replaying levels over and over, trying to get the right loot drops and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think what is really important to me is to have that hook, right? Because I am definitely in the phase right now. I am in this period with Nioh 2 where I just feel this burning desire to get stronger.
That's great.
Because it's been really satisfying. Like, raising those stats, getting access to more things, filling out those skill trees. This is something that you've done in countless games, but the hook is really strong in Nioh 2 because I'm enjoying the gameplay so much. And so they're both feeding into each other where it's like, yeah, I've killed, 100 of this dude, and I still am excited to fight it.
That reminds me of like Monster Hunter.
Sure, yes.
Like I've killed this guy 100 times, but it's still really fun to fight.
Right, it is still really fun to fight. And a note about the bosses, I've actually been surprised how different each boss has felt, not just in terms of mechanics, but in type, where it's like, okay, I'm not just, and again, this could change, I'm not just fighting a bunch of like human-type bosses, or I'm not just fighting a bunch of big brutes. It's like, okay, I'm fighting a big brute, and then a human guy, and then like this weird, cool fox thing. And Nioh 1 absolutely had some visually striking and mechanically interesting bosses, but so far that has also been present in Nioh 2. And so I think the ultimate takeaway is I just needed to revisit Nioh in a general sense, but I am surprised, like really surprised how much I'm enjoying 2.
That's good news, man.
So there are too many games, but I think if you are that type of person, I think you need to have patience, and if you're willing to like learn stats and go through your armor and your weapons and all that stuff. Put in the time. That's the best way to say it. I think you'll get a lot out of Nioh 2. And I'm really excited because as somebody who is so well versed in this genre, I'm excited to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm excited to play, man.
When you dig into it. But yeah, these are just the initial takes that we have for Nioh 2. Like I said, I actually have no idea how close I am to the end. But level 51. Want to keep playing?
Getting there, though. Working your way through.
Working my way through. We'll have more to say in the future.
So, what'll it be? Come on, you got no place to be. Tag along. You showed that thing who's boss. What? You take a vow of silence? Sorry, I'm sorry. You sure you've got your reasons?
Review copy provided by PlayStation.